Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, towering over the battlefield, the spirit of the Wa, the Big Un, going to be stepping forth onto the field of battle in this Warhammer World Championship matchup between Talcore on the greenskins and Slayer on the lizardmen. So for the greenskin army, of course, we do have a Big Un. The rogue idol ROR can be throwing his rocks from downtown, causing havoc amongst the lizardmen formation. And nice little extra ability in addition to that ranged attack is his Spirit of Gork, which is a map-wide effect that gives +4 leadership when it is above 25%. And then we also do have the Goblin Great Shaman on the Arachdrock Spider, going to be rolling on in with Vindictive Glare. We do have Sneaky Stabbing for a little bit extra armor piercing and melee attack. And of course we do have Itchy Nuisance, which does give that reduction to base weapon damage and melee attack as well. We do also have Crown of Command and Don't Even Try It. Going to be doing a nice little bit of extra direct damage to any of the kind of more expensive units on the Lizardman roster. For the front line, it is going to be Orc Boys across the line. We're going to be having some Night Goblin Fanatics as well, vanguarded in front, or just kind of deployed out in front, one of which is going to be the 8 Peak Loonies, but having 3 of those Fanatics, if they keep these guys nice and safe, they're going to be able to do a ton of damage, especially to like Saurus, Temple Guard, if there are any. We do have some Orc Arrow Boys in the back for a little bit of range DPS, some Force Goblin Spider Riders for the kind of just the melee variant, and in the front we do have the Force Goblin Spider Rider Archers, going to be coming in with Morgrub's Magi Marauders, which is the ROR, which does have that armor-piercing missile fire, which will definitely help against those big dinos. And that is going to be it for the greenskins. One more Force Goblin Spider Rider in the back, so plenty of poison on the side. Definitely going to be needing it, with the lizardmen bringing plenty of their own. So for that, they do have a couple of chameleon skinks, and they do have some skink cohort with javelins on the flanks as well for some poison as well, but they only do have 3 ammunition, but that is going to still have quite a bit of damage going to be going their way. For the mobility, they do have some Coldland Riders on the flanks as well, and they're going to be the target of some of those boulders early on, one of them already taken a bit of damage. For the front line, it is going to be Saurus Warriors for the bulk of that, and they do also have the cohort of Sotek, which is the ROR for the Red Crested Skinks, which does have some nice armor piercing. They do have Unbreakable, and they do have one nice little ability as well, which is Refuse to Die. So once this is popped, none of these models is going to be losing, or none of the models are going to be dying when that is popped. They will still take damage, but they will still survive and fight on for as long as they can. For the monsters of the lizardmen, it is going to be Lord Mazdamundi upon Zlak. Zlak is going to be rolling in with, I believe I see the Net of Anmantok. We do also have Apotheosis for the 2 spells. We have Shield the Old Ones, we have the Bound Banishment, and the Ruination of Cities. And of course he does also have the Sunburst Standard of Hexwaddle, which does give a nice little bit of 12% miss resist in an AoE around him, plus a little bit of extra melee defense. So he is going to be a hard one to bring down, especially with 130 armor to boot. So the greenskins definitely going to need to focus him down. They still have some tools to deal with. The Arachnarch Spider and the Big Un going to be providing some nice steady anchors, but there's also going to be the Thunderous One, the Ancient Stegodon ROR, and it is going to be another fear and terror causing monster, which also does have the Judgment of the Uxmax, which is going to be giving a nice little bombardment. Going to have a few charges of those when it is going to be dropping it down when it is in melee. Going to be a nice little bit to kind of thin out the greenskin line as much as possible. But that's going to be the armies for both sides, so let's get on into it, as the Big Un going to be continually just throwing some rocks in downtown, as a nice little Vindictive Glare also does go into Lord Mazdamundi. That shot is going to be flying just a little high against those Coldland Riders, while the rest of the skirmish for the greenskins is just going to be slowly whittling down this flank over here. But those skink cohort with javelins going to be trying to get some shots in, but they are going to be pretty much wasting that first round of their ammunition, as most of the shots do land astray. The AP Loonies are going to be charging in, coming out of their stock, and the Chameleon Skin is going to be forced to pull back. They haven't taken actually a decent amount of damage, but the cohort of Sotek going to be coming on through a nice Fanatics, as the AP Loonies are able to pull right on back, getting those casts off, and then retreating back behind their front line is exactly what you need to do with those Night Goblins, and to get the most amount of value out of them, because you need to keep them nice and safe, to keep all of that HP nice and high, because once they do get below 25%, they do lose that Fanatic ability. ability. But once you have those, man, do they do a ton of damage. We're going to be getting a nice rear charge in, though, from the Coldwind Riders right into these Orc Boys, getting a nice round off, and that might just be enough to break this little formation here. We do have a Ruination of Cities going to be just mowing right on through. Luckily for the Greenskins, they all go in the same direction. Had one of those gone right down the line, man, that would have done a ton of damage. Coldwind Riders going to be pushing back the rest of the skirmish cav, going to be trying to keep all of that poison at bay, and a nice banishment going to be going through those Orc Air Boys, as the Thunderous One going to be engaging with the Goblin Great Shaman, able to get its leadership quite low, but it will be able to sustain. It looks like we have a point blank Vindictive Glare, I think, is going to be going off. Actually, that is going to be the Itchy Nuisance, getting that base weapon damage and melee attack reduced for this AoE, as the Big Gun and the Ragnarok Spider are actually putting a major hurt onto the Thunderous One. Thunderous One really does need to stay with Mazda Mundi here. He can't be able to take both that Ragnarok and the Big Gun. They are very formidable foes in that engagement. Night Goblin's going to be coming in once again for a nice little engagement against the Court of Sotek, who are pretty much beaten down at this point, and the Big Gun going to be wading through, seeing his next opponent, and Lord Mazda Mundi going to be taking that charge as well. So in comes the Big Gun, taking in the clap with both of his hands, and going to be hitting Lord Mazda Mundi with a major hit there. And he's going to be getting that support of that Goblin Great Shaman in due time, as the Thunderous One is kind of far away from the rest of this engagement, and both of these single entities for the lizardmen really do need to stay engaged here together, because just both the Ragnarok Spider and the Goblin Great Shaman, I mean, either one by themselves, I mean, I think Lord Mazda Mundi and the Thunderous One wouldn't have too much of a problem. The Big Gun might be another story, but with having both of them together, it's just too much for either of those single entity monsters to really deal with. And these Coldwind Riders, I think, are getting a little bit too overextended here, trying to chase back all of the skirmish cav, as the Goblin Great Shaman is now going to be able to turn its attention, getting a nice rear charge off onto these guys, going to be causing them to rout by the looks of things. So they are terrified at first, and they should end up routing, but it looks like they might be able to stabilize their leadership a little bit earlier than initially thought. We do get the second cohort shutting down more and more of the range units for the Greenskins, but things are still looking pretty good for the Greenskins. They have both of their single entity monsters very, very healthy, and both sides have lost pretty much all of their front line. You still have some of the Fanatics left. You have some of the Chameleon Skinks, and the skirmish cav for the Greenskins is still alive and well to be getting some of that poison in. And especially for the monster fights, that poison is going to be a major game changer there. We do get a net of Amtok on the Morgulus Major Marauder, allowing the Thunderous One to get a nice charge in, hoping to break these guys here and now, get with the Saurus Warriors in support. But with how little ammunition these guys have left, probably not the best target to be using it, but they will be able to get them routed off the field by the looks of things, and shots raining in from the Big Gun, being able to land right into the flanks of the Thunderous One. But the shield, the old one, does go down, giving a nice little bit of extra damage resist and leadership in this bubble here. Just kind of keeping these guys in the fight. It's sustaining some of that incoming fire just a little bit better. But Big Gun continuing to rain in those shots, making connection once again against that Thunderous One. And there's another Ruination of Cities. Beautiful one right there, as it is going to rout all three of these skirmish cav at once, doing a ton of damage as we see all of the dead spiders laying on the ground there. But the major engagement is going to be underway. The Goblin Great Shaman getting probably a little bit too isolated from the Big Gun here, with both of the Thunderous One and Lord Mazda Mundi together with their powerful, powerful charge bonus. I mean, they have 70 charge bonus on the Thunderous One, 70 on Lord Mazda Mundi, and getting those charges in, that is where they're going to excel, is getting those cycle charges in against these single entities of the Greenskins. But balance of power is still dead even, and is going to be looking to be a monster fight for the end game here, as it's going to be the Big Gun Ragnarok Spider versus two Ancient Stegodons. You're going to see who's going to be coming out on top with that. Pretty much just clean up for both sides at this point. The Forest Goblin Spider Riders are going to be trying to just chase down everything that they can, while Lord Mazda Mundi and the Thunderous One are trying themselves to make sure all the range support is gone, all the poison is gone. And these Chameleon Skinks still have a ton of ammunition left. They're kind of forgotten, which might actually prove to be pretty useful here in the late game. With all that ammunition, they're going to be able to pretty much ensure that they're going to be the ones giving that poison in these engagements. That Goblin Great Shaman does have some poison as well on top of its back with its shots, so that is going to be a little bit of poison to be added into that monster fight. But all of these Chameleon Skinks are just going to be constantly giving poison to everything that is left. But I mean, the lizardmen, you're just seeing all of their infantry is getting beaten down. We still have some Orc Boys left, but they're pretty much going to be able to get kited away by these Chameleon Skinks. They're going to be unable to catch them. We still have some archers coming back on the flanks here. but it is definitely looking to be a monster mash for the finish. We can have probably the advantage would be slightly in the favor of the lizardmen just because of the 2 chameleon skinks that are left, and if Lord Mazdamundi and the Thunderous one are able to get its charges off, would definitely provide some nice useful there. And they are able to shatter the Force Gun Spider Riders. They did have to use a Net of Amatok to chase them. I think that is probably a little not worth the cost of the spell there, because you definitely would like to be using that like against like the Ragnarok Spider at the end, or even the big gun, because if we take a look at their charge bonuses, we have 30 on the big gun, and on the Ragnarok it is 40, and it isn't nothing. So getting the charge like guaranteed on these guys in that monster fight, I think might be the better way to have handled that, because those are Ragnarok Spiders, because as soon as they would have, not the Ragnarok Spiders, the Forest Goblin Spider Riders, as soon as they would have gotten into melee with either of these guys, they probably would have routed to Terror anyways, so it really wasn't the biggest threat. But it is looking to be just down to a Dabigan and the Goblin Great Shaman. That is all that the Greenskins have left. They have like 1 unit, I think, on the far, but it is going to be routing off the field, so it is just down to the single entities, and they're just going to be firing away Vindictive Glares as they slowly wade their way forward. And really, the big gun, it does have an ability which it can use up some of its HP to get some more ammunition left on its ranged attack, but at this point, that HP is going to be very, very helpful to keep on it just for as long as possible. Definitely doesn't want to be given the lizardmen here any advantages in that regard. And the lizardmen themselves, they don't even have to engage right now. They can just allow the chameleon skinks to get as much damage off as they can, but it's probably in their best interest to charge in when they do have that ammunition still available to give poison to both of these sides. And this is probably when they want to start collapsing, because the longer they wait, the more and more Vindictive Glares that Goblin Great Shaman is going to be able to get off on Lord Mazdamundi, slowly whittling him down bit by bit. Now, of course, he does have a ton of Winds of Magic as well, getting some more Apotheosis off if he does choose to, but the big gun going to be collapsing upon the chameleon skinks, as they do lack just a little bit of micro here, as they do get just body slammed into the ground. Going to be getting these guys terrified off, but they will still be back, and they still have ammunition to be sparing. And that Goblin Great Shaman, though, is starting to take quite a bit of damage, because unlike the big gun, he does not have, well, actually, as I say that, it does have 120 armor, but is taking overcast damage, just continually trying to overcast those Vindictive Glares against Lord Mazdamundi. But here is that final collapse, and it is going to be a fight of the Titans, as the big gun once again body slams into the ground. Just going to be doing a ton of damage to all of these skinks here, and in comes the charge of Lord Mazdamundi. He pops shield of the old ones as he gets the charge in, and the Crown of Command is popped just at the right time for the Goblin Great Shaman. He was on the verge of routing, and he cannot afford to be coming out of this fight so early on. Needs to stay in, because the big gun is most likely, the biggest problem with it is going to be its leadership. So as long as that Goblin Great Shaman is able to stay in that fight, the big gun is going to be able to stay in even longer. And the more damage that big gun takes, the more damage it is going to be able to dish out. And it is just a fight of the Titans. The big gun, can he deal with it? Because the Goblin Great Shaman is going to be routing off. It is on just slivers of HP, and actually is going to be shattered completely. So the big gun is all that it stands between the Greenskins and defeat at this point. Goblin Great Shaman even topples down to the ground. And it is going to be a fight of the Titans. Big gun dropping the fist right into Lord Mazdamundi. But both of these ancient stags going to be proving to be a major problem to deal with. Lord Mazdamundi is going to be pulling out, trying to get make use of that charge bonus to get a nice rear charge into the big Titan itself. As we're going to be taking a look, that leadership is getting very, very low. And honestly, if that leadership wasn't a problem for the big gun, I think the big gun may actually be able to tank out the damage well enough and dish it out more and more, because it's just going to be able to tank all this damage so very well. And if we take a look at its stats now, it does have a little bit of reduced armor, but it is going to be getting an increase in that weapon strength, so it is now up to 660. But with its leadership so very low, it is going to be wavering, and I think that is going to be it for the Greenskins here in this fight. I don't think that big gun is going to be able to outlast both of these big dinos. It should be able to clear out everything else, but I mean, yeah, as I was saying before, I think with the leadership, but it is able to actually withstand some of its leadership, as it does start. I can't see why it is able to get some of its leadership back, but it is being able to stabilize bit by bit, but once again going to start wavering, and it is just on the fringes of breaking, and I think that is going to be our game. And there it goes, finally ends up routing. And that will be game 1 of the series. the lizardmen do take it. So let's take a look at the after battle report, and we'll update the scorecard as well. So Slayer does take game 1. So let's update that real quick and then go over how each side fared in this fight. So the Thunderous one racking up 2,600 in total value. Colon Riders not really doing so well. They did get pretty overextended in that fight, and then were kind of outnumbered in the greenskins back line. Tech did very, very well, getting 1,000 on those guys. Saurus Warriors doing decent, but not really all too great. Chameleon Skinks, great as always, getting over 700 apiece, and then Lord Mastamundi, 2,100 on him. But he is a very, very expensive lord anyways. Now, as for the greenskins, the big gun, getting 2,500, and again, though it is such an expensive unit, very hard for it to pay for itself. But it was still a very cool tool to be bringing. Definitely, the greenskins do struggle dealing with the large monsters on the lizardman side of things. Morgoth's Major Marauders did very well, getting 900 on them. That armor-piercing missile fire doing an excellent work throughout that fight. And then the rest of the skirmish and the melee just doing some decent work, but providing that poison was very helpful. Even the range units doing okay. The Fanatics, on the other hand, if we take a look at all those, 800 on these guys, 300. Unfortunately, the AP Gloomies didn't do so well. And as to the other Fanatics, I think only getting 1 Fanatics off between all of the units. I didn't really see any others in that fight. And then the Orc Boys really just weren't able to really stand up to it, while the Goblin Great Shaman was able to get 2,400 as well, so doing some decent work with him. But otherwise, yeah, it was just the big dinos proved too much for the greenskins there, and again, that is just one of the problems that the greenskins do suffer from, is dealing with those big dinos effectively. That fear and terror is just such a major problem with whatever big dino that the lizardmen do decide to bring. But that's going to be it for game 1. Let's roll on in to game 2. King Lewin rallies the peasants as the greenskins threaten the lands of Bretonnia for game 2, as we'll have Talcore on the Bretonians, and Slayer will be leading the greenskins this time around. So for the Bretonians, frontline is going to be just a bunch of peasant mobs, going to be holding back the tide of the greenskins for as long as possible and allow all of the ranged units and the cavalry to really get the work in. So we do have peasant bowmen with pox arrows in that back line. It is going to be 3 of those. We do have a Damsel of Life. Damsel of Life is going to be rolling in with Earthblood and Awakening of the Wood, as well as the Scroll of Shielding, as well as I believe the Amulet of Power is what it is called, or the Power Stone. And then the Cavalry Corps is going to be Questing Knights, Knights of the Realm on that flank over there, and on the opposing flank it is going to be kind of the mirror of that, where we do have some Knights of them. One of them is going to be the Defenders of Fleur-de-Lis, the Knights Errant ROR, which does give them that frenzy. So there's going to be quite a bit of cav moving across the field. We do also have a field trebuchet. We're going to be forcing the engagement from the greenskins, getting them to come to the Bretonians versus the other way around. And of course, it is King Lewin, the Younker, up in the sky. He is bringing the Sword of Caron. We do have Stand Your Ground. We have the beloved Son of Bretonia. He's giving a nice little bit of buffs map wide. Once he does get below, actually no, yes, when he is below 50% in terms of total hit points. So that'll give a nice little bit of immune to psychology and the like. And then we have the Ladies Champion, which does give him that nice little bit of regen. So for the greenskins now, swing on over to that side. It is going to be Savage Orcs for the bulk of the infantry, but we do also have some Black Orcs. Black Orcs are going to be the best target, though, for that Field Trebuchet, as the first shot's already raining in and doing a lot of damage to these guys. For the Cavalry Corps to contend against the Bretonians, we do have some Orc Boar Boys going to be trying to have a little bit of mobility for the greenskins, but they are going to be outmatched by the much more advanced Bretonians, especially those Questing Knights, going to be putting a major hurt onto these Orc Boys. We also do have the Rusty Arrows, though, to kind of help with that, because they do have some armor sundering and then even some poison when they are engaged in melee. In the field, or in the forest over here, we do have some more Orc Boar Boy Big Uns this time around with the Night Goblins. This is going to be the 8 Peak Loonies, going to be the ROR Fanatics, so they are going to be unbreakable, and they are going to be kind of hiding amongst the tree lines with the Goblin Bancross, who does have a Day Needs Stabbin', which does give a nice little bit of reduction, so minus 30 armor, minus 24 melee defense to any lord or hero, and that is going to be targeting King Lewin foremost amongst them. And then for the lords and heroes for the greenskins, we do have Grom the Paunch. He's going to be rolling in with 3 of his items. He's going to be foregoing the Axe of Grom, but he's going to be bringing the Language of Du Bois, which gives that +5 melee defense and 4 leadership, plus the immune to psychology when he is engaged in melee. And we have Degradon is here as well, giving 16 leadership, 30 base weapon damage, and 24 melee attack to boot. And then we have the Lucky Banner, which gives him 40% magic or damage resist and plus 40 melee attack to boot. For the spellcasting, it is going to be the Giant River Troll Hag, who is going to be bringing Spirit Leech and Mither. So just a little bit of extra damage onto the field, and that Mither is going to be very helpful for the control, dealing with all of the Bretonnian cavalry. And in the forefront, they do have Goblin Wolf Rider archers with some Force Goblin Spider Riders and Morgrim's Magi Marauders for that armor-piercing missile fire. They will have to be very careful of all of the archers, but they will actually trade very well into any of the Bretonnian cavalry. That's going to be the armies, so let's get things rolling. King Lewin pretty much just going to help keep these guys nice and screened out as the questing knights do kind of pull forward of their peasant bowmen. And peasant bowmen are going to start opening up as well, going to be doing some nice little bit of damage into the skirmish cav of the greenskins, but otherwise the vast greenskin front line is going to be advancing upon the Bretonnian position, getting a nice little cheeky charge here into the peasant bowmen. Might be enough to rout them off, but they are able to stabilize their leadership just a little bit as Bretonnian cav is going to once again pull forward. Looks like we have a Spirit Leech going down on King Lewin. Unfortunately, I don't think that is necessarily the best target because he is just going to be able to regen through that. I think the questing knights or even the defenders of the fleur-de-lis are probably going to be the much better target for that, as the paladin is going to be getting just pushed around by Ground Punch, getting way too far forward here. I did miss him early on as he does have that Guardian, and he's going to want to stay a little bit helpful as Sword of Crone is popped from King Lewin as he does kind of dive down on top of Ground Punch, getting a nice charge in there. But the Lucky Banner is going to be popped by Grom as well, going to be making sure he takes a lot less damage from King Lewin. And it looks like we have what? Oh, that is an Awakening of the Wood coming down in the back line. Going to be hitting both of these Orc Boar Boys, and that is going to be doing a lot of damage to them. Very nicely cast there, so it's going to be missing all of their units. But King Lewin going to be wanting to pull out as the Rusty Arrow is going to be doing quite a bit of damage, and Grom is just going to be cycling through into that back line, avoiding King Lewin with all of his just slip maneuvers here, going in and out, dodging those charges. But he is going to get collapsed upon now by the Knights of the Realm as the Orc Boar Boys do get broken down, and Grom the Paunch is now in a very bad spot here as he is stuck between the cavalry and King Lewin as his Lucky Banner is being used up. We did get a little fanatic cast there, and if we look on the far flank here where the greenskins have charged from the forest, the Orc Boar begins trying to break through the line here. The questing knights have taken a ton of damage so far, but so has Grom. But the Bretonnians need to stay up on top of Grom, keep him down, because he will just continually regen throughout this, and if they are able to finish him off, that is definitely going to be beneficial in that regard. But this engagement over here is going pretty well for the greenskins. They have been able to get rid of or getting these questing knights very low, but otherwise the rest of the Bretonnians are holding back the tide. These Night Goblins and the Orc Boar Boy Biggins just are unable to really punch a hole in that formation. And just kind of looking out amongst it, the rest of the Bretonnian cav is doing very well at just kind of cleaning up all of the other units. However, the Savage Orcs are in a nice position here if they are remembered just to start sweeping through this backline here. They have both of these Peasant Bowmen as well as the Field Trebuchets just free for the taking at this point. There's nothing around that can really stop them from doing it soon enough. We do have the Defenders of Fleur-de-Lis, which are probably going to try and kind of bring their attention back this direction, but unfortunately these Savage Orcs are going to be able to get onto this Field Trebuchets, and I think the Peasant at this point need to kind of pull back and try to reform their ranks, because I think the Field Trebuchet at this point is just going to be lost for good. Grom is very, very low. He is not gone yet, though, as he is still going to be regenerating, but he is getting very low in terms of HP. The Goblin McBosh is able to finish off that Paladin, but the charge in from King Lewin is going to be making sure that Grom does not become a problem in the late game and finishes him off once and for all, and will now turn his attention to the rest of the greenskins. But that is going to be all she wrote as army losses do take hold as Bretonnia takes game 2, evening it out to 1-1 going into the final rubber match. So we'll update the scorecard as well. Talcore pulling back to force a game 3. So let's go over the armies real quick here. So for the greenskins, Morgrim's Magi Marauders doing some pretty decent work, 630, able to at least pay for themselves. Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the Goblin Wolf Rider Archers unable to really do so on that front. And then we have the Orc Boar Boys, which did get really broken down pretty quickly here. That Awakening of the Wood really did a lot of damage. Actually, no, the Dwellers Below. That was a Dwellers Below, not Awakening of the Wood. Yeah, Dwellers Below did quite a bit of damage. The Orc Boar Boy Biggins, on the other hand, were able to do a decent amount of work, but were unable to really kind of finish that job and break that Bretonian flank. I mean, had like the flanks been broken from the Bretonians, it may have been a different story if they were able to get into those peasant bowmen. But unfortunately, the Bretonian cav was able to have a thing or two to say about that. The Rusty Errors, unable to really generate a ton of value. The 8-peak loonies did do just that. A nice little Fanatics cast, I think, probably went right through those Questing Knights, doing a ton of damage there. And then the Savage Orcs doing decent, but not anything too ridiculous. And the Black Orcs was probably one of the biggest downsides here. Was probably really hoping they wouldn't bring trebuchets, but unfortunately there was some trebuchets, so they really took a bunch of damage on that approach. The Hag did some nice, decent damage. Goblin Big Boss was able to finish off the Paladin, and Grom was just kind of forced to run for most of that match. Once that Lucky Banner was popped early on, King Lewin was able to really dish out a ton of damage throughout the course of that fight, really making sure Grom stayed more conservative instead of aggressive. For the Bretonians, Field Trebuchets actually wasn't able to get as much damage as they may have thought. I guess not really doing as much to those Black Orcs, and most of that was probably done by the Cav. And the Cav did do some nice, decent work. These Questing Knights were able to get 1,000, and then like these Knights of the Realm getting 1,300 on these guys. Very good at chasing things off, 800 on them, and then the Defenders of Fleur-de-Lis only 300. But the Peasant Bowmen able to pretty much fire freely through most of the fight. Some of it was kind of pushed back early on, but like these guys were able to get 750, and even these guys 360 and 300, so pretty close to paying for themselves. These guys paid for themselves a couple of times over. Peasant Bowmen, really, I mean, you're not really going to be expecting a whole lot from them. At least Paladin was able to get some damage before he went off, and the Damsel of Life, that Dwellers Below, able to get 819, doing some nice, decent work on that. And then King Lewin, 1,600, but really once Grom did fall, the leadership kind of crumbled for the Greenskins. But that is going to be it for Game 2, so now let's get right on in to the rubber match. Game 3, the deciding game of this best of 3 series. So let's roll on into that. The men of the Empire have cut down one tree too many as Durthu marches to the sounds of the war drum, as we have the Wood Elves versus the Empire in this final match in the best of 3 between Talcore and Slayer. Talcore will be on the Wood Elves, and we'll have Slayer on the Empire. So for the Wood Elves, we do have Dryads for that front line, one of which is the Wraiths of the Frozen Heart, as they are going to be coming on in. They do have, of course, that Visitor Resist that is associated with all of the Tree Spirits, but they do also have that Frenzy, and they do have that Frostbite as well. Going to be fighting just a nice little bit of slows for the opponents. If they do get in melee, they'll be able to kind of hold them down and allow their archers to do just a little bit more work than they may otherwise have been able to. And then for the rest of the forces, the mobility is going to be some Glade Riders with some great Stag Knights as well. Some very strong, pretty good tool to deal with some of the Empire cavalry themselves, as they do have that very nice armor-piercing weapon damage, and of course they are just some monstrous cavalry as well, and they do have some nice little bronze shields to boot, kind of withstand some of the fire coming in from the Empire, and then just some Glade Riders with spears, and there is going to be one as well vanguarded behind the lines, going to be trying to get into the back line of the Empire. And then we just have some range units, so some Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts giving a little bit of armor piercing, and some Hagbane tips to provide some of that poison as well into these engagements. So a nice little mix between the two. One regular variant, and it is, of course, a Durthu for the Lord. He is bringing quite a few items. He does have that Sword of Daith, which is a AoE damage, going to be doing a nice bit of damage there, and he does have a Flock of Doom, which is pretty much a lesser version of that Sword of Daith. And then we have Transformation to Kadan, giving a nice little Manticore summons onto the field, and of course he is a major duelist as well, and he'll do quite well against like Volkmar, for example, are kind of one of probably his best targets. Unfortunately for the Empire, there is going to be no Volkmar on the field today. Instead, we are going to be having Marcus Wolfheart, Master of the Hunt, and he's going to be having a nice large target target in his sights, and that is going to be Durthu, of course. So for him, he is going to be bringing, it looks like he just has his hunter snares, however, so he is going to be getting a nice little net. He is unfortunately not going to be bringing his amber bow, because that would have been a very nice little use to be bringing down the big tree, especially with focus shot in addition. But we do have a Jade Wizard coming in with that Dwellers Below, or the Awakening of the Wood. You keep missing, getting that messed up. So the Awakening of the Wood for this one, and then Earthblood to add to that. For the front line, it is going to be spearmen mixed in with some swordsmen, just kind of providing a pretty cheap frontline infantry, nothing too ridiculous, though they probably will lose out to those dryads. For the range, we do have huntsmen, a very good anti-large fire, and then for the mobility, we do have Knights of Blazing Sun, Empire Knights, and then just some more on the other side as well. But that's going to be the army, so let's roll on in. As the sides are just on the verge of engagement, we get a nice rear charge in by these Glade Riders, charging into the huntsmen, going to be doing a ton of damage off the charge. Other two get a nice charge into the Knights of Blazing Sun and these Empire Knights, and getting that charge bonus, especially with those great Stag Knights, is going to be putting a major amount of damage into those Knights of the Blazing Sun. On that side, they definitely are going to be needing some healing as quickly as they can. We also do get that transformation to Kadan, getting that Frail Manticore up into the sky so early on. There is going to be a net going to be going down right as that summon. It is going to be catching both Durthu and that Frail Manticore, and that is a very nice, it's going to be wasting a lot of the charge on that summon for that Frail Manticore. But on the far flank for the Empire, things are going very, very poorly. We have the Spearmen getting broken down. These Huntsmen have shattered. These Huntsmen have routed. And this Cavalry Corps over here has completely shattered across the board. So things looking very strong for the Wood Elves here. And this engagement as well, we're seeing these Empire Knights get shattered. There is that Awakening of Wood going right in the middle of the Great Stag Knights, doing a nice bit of damage, able to rout off these Glade Guard. And the Knights of Blazing Sun do get a nice charge into the Glade Guard with Starfire Shafts. But things are looking very bad for the Empire as they are on the back foot. Their entire left flank is getting completely decimated at this point, as the cavalry for the Wood Elves are just cycling into the back line. The Sigmar Sons will be holding since they are unbreakable, but we do get, I think this is the, actually no, this is still the first summon of the Feral Manticore, but it is just kind of hanging above head right now as Durthu now is engaged with Marcus, and Marcus definitely does not want to be anywhere close, and Durthu's going to be assisting him just a little bit with that. It's going to be sending him flying, but he's going to be continuing the pursuit as quickly as he can, and we are going to be getting a Flock of Doom down, hitting all of these units, just kind of reducing them bit by bit. But I think the Wood Elves are looking very strong here. The Empire definitely need to use the height advantage here and just charge down into the Wood Elf forces. But we do get another Awakening Wood hitting the Dryads. They're just kind of slowly whittling them down bit by bit. But Durthu is just in hot pursuit. Really, Marcus is kind of his last biggest threat, as is these unit of Huntsmen. And these Empire Knights do get a nice charge into these Glade Riders here. And they should be able to free up their Huntsmen. And if they are able to free them up, they should be able to get some nice shots into Durthu. But they are still quite low, only 27 models left, but it should still be enough to deal with Durthu. But the just the Wood Elves, just the mobility, all of their range units, it's just there's so much left on their side, so things are looking very strong. These Empire Knights are the only real strong mobility left. The Jade Wizard is getting compromised right now by all these great Stag Knights, and just I think it's just about to get a cast off, gets knocked down, and it is going to be that, or not necessarily wasted, just going to be dropped, and they're going to have to be recasting that again. And all of these archers now going to be free to fire throughout the rest of the course of the fight. The Huntsmen are getting some nice damage into Durthu here, and with Marcus Wolfhart back as well, they very well might be able to bring down Durthu, but at this point, even losing Durthu, I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference left. There's just too much mobility left. He's going to be getting a nice Awakening of the Wood right into this blobbed up formation around the Jade Wizard, doing a nice bit of damage, but it might actually get their attention pulled away, as I think they are going to be trying to pull forward, try and free up Durthu, as even the Empire Knights are not able to hold down Durthu for long enough. They are going to terrify a route here, and the Great Stag Knight's going to be charging right into the terror routing Empire Knights, getting a vicious charge, and they should be able to break them and I think shatter them at this point as well, though Durthu is getting very, very low. Another volley or two from the Huntsman might just be enough to bring it down, as balance power is actually creeping back towards the Empire's favor. It is right back to middle here, as Durthu is just taking a ton of damage, and it, I mean, just seeing what is left, though, I still think that the Wood Elves have the advantage here. They have way more range units left. And even the mobility is still in their favor, even though the Great Stag Knights have taken a lot of damage. But, I mean, Durthu is able to survive, though, just as he is on the very edges of death. He is at 90 HP. He is almost about to go down. And just as he is on the death's bed, Marcus Wolfhart and these huntsmen both get routed off the field by these Great Stag Knights coming in last second save, but we still have some more range units as these huntsmen can be coming on down. They are going to be revealed, so they Durthu couldn't be pulling right on out of there. He wants to stay out of the range of those huntsmen at all costs, and if he can stay alive, that's going to be providing just a little bit of extra wins and magic. If he can get those casts off, the Great Stag Knights do get a charge into the Empire Knights, going to be hitting them very hard, and I think that is going to be enough to break these guys. The rest of the Great Stag Knights are now going to have pretty much free reign. All of the mobility for the Empire is now gone, and there is enough ammunition left on all of these Glade Guard to really just make sure that like the Huntsmen aren't going to be a major threat. The Huntsmen might be enough to break these Great Stag Knights, especially with these Spearmen in support. I mean, the Great Stag Knights are getting so very low, but even with the Great Stag Knights being pushed off, these guys are escorting Marcus Wolfhart off the field. Durthu is staying nice and safe, and now all the focus shots coming in from the Glade Guard should be enough to finish off the last of the Empire State troops. Huntsmen getting low in terms of leadership. They are wavering, and these Dryads should be enough to deal with the Spearmen. A Earthblood is going to be going down, trying to just keep them in the fight for as long as physically possible. Huntsmen do end up breaking, and I think this is just about going to be it, as a volley from all of the Glade Guard are going to be, might be enough to rout off the Jade Wizard, and with the magic gone, I think that is going to be it. I think that is all that is left, even, is the Jade Wizard, and the Wood Elves do pull through. A very strong initial engagement for the Wood Elves, and they actually almost lost it there in the end. I was surprised that the balance of power kind of fell as quickly as it did with Durthu getting low, but Durthu was able to survive by the very skin of his teeth, or the bark of his hide, or whatever Durthu would be having. So let's update the scorecard though as well to kind of reflect that final score. So he's going to be taking it 2-1. So let's go over the end result real quick here. So the Knights of Blazing Sun did do quite well, 1900 on these guys, doing a ton of damage. The other Knights of Blazing Sun, however, didn't do quite as well, and part of that was that initial engagement on the Empire left flank. The Empire was definitely caught flat-footed. Had they gotten the counter charge into the Great Stag Knights, that may have been able to dish out the damage enough the other way, where in the late game they would have had a little bit more left, or they would have been able to make sure that the Great Stag Knights weren't around to really chase things off, and that may have made a big difference there, especially with how low Durthu was getting. Having one less Great Stag Knight in that engagement would have either left Marcus Wolfhart or those Huntsmen alive to finish off Durthu, because he was one shot away from going down from Marcus, but he was able to survive in the end. Marcus Wolfhart getting 1,000. Jade Wizard getting a little bit with those Awakening of the Woods. Rest of the front line, as kind of expected, not really doing all too well, though the Sigmar Sons did okay. Huntsmen, some of them doing some nice work, 940 on these guys, 622, but these Huntsmen got pretty much deleted very early on by a nice rear charge from those Glade Riders. And for the Wood Elves, on the other hand, Great Stag Knights getting 1900 on these, 1000 on them. And then the Glade Riders themselves doing some decent work as well. And then really the Glade Guard, able to use up all of their ammunition, was just racking up the value. It's got 1,200, 600, almost 1,000, 700 on those guys, and even all of the Dryads traded pretty well into the Empire State troops, as you can see, 700 on a few of them. Otherwise, they did quite well. And Durthu himself getting 2,200, and just the fact that he was able to survive at the end really did help with that balance of power, forcing that army losses. But a very well played series to both sides there. Very exciting indeed. And I do hope you all enjoyed the video. And as always, have a good one.